The Grand Hall in Manila was buzzing with anticipation. Celebrity chefs, food critics, and media from around the world had gathered for the International Culinary Summit. Among them was Jean-Pierre Laurent, a prestigious Michelin judge from France with over 30 years of experience. He had judged restaurants across Europe, awarded stars to the finest establishments, and his verdict could make or break a chef's career overnight. Jean-Pierre sat at the head table, his expression stern and unimpressed. He had flown to the Philippines reluctantly, only because the summit organizers insisted. To him, Southeast Asian cuisine was interesting but lacked the sophistication of French gastronomy. He had made his opinions clear in interviews before arriving, calling traditional Filipino food too rustic and lacking refinement. The summit began with presentations from various countries. Japanese chefs showcased their delicate sushi. Italian masters demonstrated their handmade pasta. Jean-Pierre nodded politely, occasionally scribbling notes, but his face remained emotionless. Then came the Philippine presentation. A humble street vendor named Aling Rosa was invited to showcase traditional Filipino cuisine. She wasn't a trained chef. She didn't have a culinary degree. She had learned everything from her grandmother in a small province in Pampanga. The organizers wanted to honor authentic Filipino cooking, not just fine dining interpretations. Aling Rosa stepped onto the stage nervously, carrying a simple bamboo tray. On it were various Filipino delicacies: crispy lechon kawali, tangy sinigang creamy kare-kare, and at the center, a dish that made several international guests whisper and point: balut, fertilized duck eggs, a beloved Filipino street food that many foreigners found disturbing. Jean-Pierre's eyes narrowed when he saw the balut. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. The atmosphere shifted. What was supposed to be a celebration of Filipino culture suddenly felt like a judgment. Aling Rosa explained each dish in broken English, her voice shaking slightly. She talked about the history of balut, how it was a source of protein for working-class Filipinos, how it was enjoyed with salt and vinegar, how it represented resilience and resourcefulness. She spoke with genuine pride, but Jean-Pierre wasn't listening. He was staring at the balut with visible disgust. When it was time for the judges to taste, Jean-Pierre raised his hand and spoke firmly. "I will not be trying that," he said, pointing at the balut. "I have standards. This is not food. I cannot even call it cuisine." The room went silent. Cameras stopped clicking. Aling Rosa's face fell. A few Filipino attendees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The other judges looked at each other, unsure how to respond. The moderator, a Filipino diplomat named Ambassador Santos, quickly stepped forward to diffuse the tension. He smiled nervously and tried to redirect the conversation, thanking Aling Rosa for her authentic presentation and inviting the judges to try the other dishes first. But the damage was done. The entire hall had witnessed Jean-Pierre's public dismissal of Filipino culture. Aling Rosa stood frozen at the podium for a moment, her hands trembling slightly as she looked down at her bamboo tray. These were dishes she had perfected over 30 years of cooking. Recipes passed down from her grandmother. Food that had fed her family, put her children through school, and brought joy to countless customers at her small street stall in Pampanga. And now, in front of the world, it had been called not food. But something unexpected happened. A young Filipino chef named Miguel, who had been trained in Europe and returned home to champion Filipino cuisine in fine dining, stood up from the audience. He walked purposefully toward the stage, his chef's whites crisp and professional. The room watched in silence as he approached Aling Rosa's tray. "May I?" Miguel asked her softly. Aling Rosa nodded, still fighting back tears. Miguel carefully picked up one of the balut eggs. He cracked it with practiced ease, sprinkled it with rock salt, and added a few drops of spiced vinegar. Then, in full view of everyone, especially Jean-Pierre, he consumed it with obvious pleasure. He closed his eyes, savoring the flavors, nodding appreciatively. "Balut," Miguel announced clearly in English.
This is not just food. This is my heritage. This is our story.
His voice carrying across the silent hall. represents everything beautiful about Filipino cuisine. It requires courage to try. It demands an open mind, and it rewards those brave enough to experience it with complex flavors that Western palates often cannot comprehend on first encounter. He turned directly to face Jean-Pierre. I trained in Paris for 5 years. I worked in Michelin-starred restaurants. I learned French technique, Italian precision, Japanese discipline. But you know what I discovered? That the most profound cuisine often comes not from fancy kitchens, but from humble hands that have perfected their craft over generations. Jean-Pierre's expression hardened, his jaw clenched. He was not accustomed to being challenged, especially not by someone he likely viewed as inferior. The tension in the room was electric. Miguel wasn't finished. He picked up another balut, this time offering it directly to Jean-Pierre. He walked slowly toward the judge's table, holding the egg like a peace offering, though everyone knew it was a challenge. "Monsieur Laurent," Miguel said, his voice calm but firm, "you judged this food without tasting it.
You expect me to eat this?
You dismissed an entire culture's culinary tradition based on appearance alone. That's not what a true judge does. That's what a prejudiced tourist does." Gasps echoed through the hall. No one spoke to Jean-Pierre Laurent like that, ever. The other judges looked shocked. Some audience members covered their mouths. But Miguel stood his ground, the balut still extended toward Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre's face turned red. He looked like he wanted to explode, to put this upstart chef in his place. But hundreds of eyes were watching. Cameras were recording. This moment would be remembered. He was trapped by his own arrogance. "You want me to eat that?" Jean-Pierre's voice dripped with contempt. "I want you to be the judge you claim to be," Miguel replied. "Open-minded, fair, willing to experience before condemning. Isn't that what you taught in Paris? Or do those principles only apply when the food comes from Europe?" The silence was deafening. Jean-Pierre stared at the balut, then at Miguel, then at the hundreds of faces watching him. For the first time in his career, Jean-Pierre Laurent looked uncertain. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out. The entire hall held its breath. He took the balut. Miguel showed him how to prepare it, just as Aling Rosa had taught countless street customers. Crack the shell, add salt, add vinegar. Jean-Pierre's hand shook as he brought it to his lips. He took a bite. His expression was unreadable. He chewed slowly. The room waited. Aling Rosa watched with tears streaming down her face, no longer from shame, but from hope. Finally, Jean-Pierre swallowed. He sat back in his chair, quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter, almost humble.
For my arrogance and dismissal, I am truly, deeply sorry.
"I was wrong," he said simply. "This is complex, rich. It deserves respect." He looked at Aling Rosa. "I apologize." The room erupted in applause.